السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. وإذا حييتم بتحية فحيوا بأحسن منها أو ردوها. الحمد لله على إحسانه والشكر له على تفضله وامتنانه، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله تعظيما لشأنه، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله داعي إلى رضوانه وعلى آله وأصحابه وإخوانه. أما بعد، لكل شيء إذا تم نقصانه فلا يغر بطيب العيش إنسانه. هي الأمور كما شهدتها دول، من سره الزمان سأته أزمانه. وهذه الدار لا تبقي على أحد ولا يدوم على حل لها شان. أيها الأحبة, we are continuing with our lecture series regarding the history of the Muslims of Andalus. This is a history, Ikhwani Fillah, that began in the year 92 of the Hijri calendar up to the year 897 of the Hijri calendar. Over 800 years of our history where we were ruling Spain and Portugal, and we created one of the greatest civilizations that was ever witnessed by the human beings. A civilization that they still speak about today in many universities and many colleges where they study this great history. This is a history that is so great, the history of the Muslims of Andalus, that the Jews, the Israelis, Benjamin Netanyahu, Ariel Sharon, all these people, they say the greatest period for us as Jews is when we were ruled by the Muslims in Andalus. We are studying that history as Jews. Also, as Ikhwani Fillah, as Muslims, we should also study this history. Ikhwani Fillah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us all good health and siha. We were not available for the last 2 months because of some issues we had with some of our family members. Alhamdulillah, they're all well now. So inshallah, we'll continue with this path. The program is we finish the history of Andalus, then we start the history of the Mongolians with the Muslims, then we start the four Khulafa, the Seerah. After we finish the Tariq and Seerah, we can go back and study the other topics of Aqeedah and Fiqh, inshallah. Ikhwani Fillah, after the Muslims appeared upon this earth, they had one message. The message of taking this light of Tawheed, this light of La ilaha illallah upon all the lands. The Prophet ﷺ was sent to remove us from the dhulumat into the nur. So the Muslims always, from each period, they carry this message. They want to remove the people from darkness into the light. They want to remove the people from being the people of the hellfire to be the people of Jannah. We did not benefit the least bit by having this mushrikun or this kuffar to enter the hellfire. We want them to be part of us in the light for us to enter Jannah. So the Muslims, they spread Islam, Ikhwani Fillah, towards the east and towards the west. They conquered the entire lands of Persia. There's no more Persian Empire. The Muslims conquered it and it became the land of Muslims. Most of the Roman Empire was conquered by the Muslims. Most of North Africa was conquered by the Muslims. So the Muslims in the year 92 of the Hijri calendar, the governor of North Africa is called Musa ibn Nusayr. Musa ibn Nusayr. Let's just summarize the previous lessons because we took a gap of almost 2 months, so we've not had a lecture. So let us summarize. So Musa ibn Nusayr, the governor of North Africa, he looks. He says, Alhamdulillah, we have spread Islam upon the entire lands of North Africa. What is the land that comes after North Africa? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قَاتِلُوا الَّذِينَ يَلُونَكُم مِّنَ الْكُفَّارِ وَلْيَجِدُوا فِيكُمْ غِلْظَةً. That you're supposed to spread Islam to this land. After you finish this land, you take it to the land after it and land after it. So the Muslims in Morocco look, geographically, what is the land that is next that we should spread this deen of Allah Azza wa Jal? And the land that is next to Morocco is to cross the Mediterranean into Europe, the land of Spain and Portugal. So in the year 92 of the Hijri calendar, the month of Ramadan, Muslims led by one of the greatest leaders, Tariq ibn Ziyad, he lands on the lands of Spain with an army, a great army to conquer Europe. How large was that army we took in the previous class, Haji Abu Bakr? 7,000. Only 7,000 Muslims landed on Europe to conquer this land of Europe. 7,000. The year 92 of the Hijri calendar, the 28th of Ramadan. Ramadan is always a month of futuhat, a month of victories from the great battle of Badr, 17th of Ramadan. The conquering of Makkah, 20th of Ramadan. Ain Jalut, so many battles happened in the month of Ramadan. So the Muslims landed 92, 28th of Ramadan, and they meet a great army from the Visigothic Empire of Spain, or the Visigothic Kingdom of Spain. 100,000 Spaniards versus an army of 7,000. Who's going to be victorious? The Muslims, they say 7,000. We are a little bit taking it too much. So they ask for help from Africa. Musa ibn Nusayr sends them great support to fight 100,000. I'm sending you great support. How much is he sending him? 5,000. So the army of the Muslims is 12,000, the year 92 of the Hijri calendar. 12,000 Muslims versus over 100,000 Spaniards from the Visigothic Empire. And battle occurs from the 28th of Ramadan. 8 days of battle, Muslims versus these Europeans, these Spaniards. And alhamdulillah, on the 6th of Shawwal or therein, the Muslims gained victory after losing 3,000 martyrs, pure blood, blessed blood. And they managed to be victorious in this first battle that's known as the Battle of Wadi Birbat that occurred on the 28th of Ramadan, the year 92 of the Hijri calendar. So if you asked who conquered Spain and Portugal for the Muslims, is Tariq ibn Ziyad and Musa ibn Nusayr, who was his overall boss who led him. So Tariq ibn Ziyad conquers, he wins this battle. He goes to the city of Sevilla. And we said previously, if you look at the La Liga, the football league, the people who follow the Spanish league, all these names used to be Muslim cities. All these towns were Muslim towns. So the first town they conquered is the city of Sevilla, Ishbilia. And you know them as the champions of the European Cup. So they conquered Sevilla. Then Tariq ibn Ziyad sees, this land, we've defeated the biggest army. Most of them, they have lost morale. They're really scared of us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has this way of creating a phobia in the hearts of these people. Allah creates ru'b, nusirtu bil ru'b, masirata shahr. The Prophet ﷺ says that we Muslims are given a victory over 1 month distance because of the fear, of the terror they fear in their hearts when they hear Allahu Akbar, when they hear La ilaha illallah. So he conquered Sevilla. And he says, these people are very weak. Then he sends an army, 700 soldiers. You 700 soldiers, go conquer Murcia. 700, go conquer, what is that city? Cordoba. The city of Cordoba. That's one of the greatest cities in Islamic history. A city that is equal to the capital state of the Muslims, Baghdad, was conquered by only 700 Muslims. 700 Muslims. I remember when we used to study hadith, we used to study that two great scholars of the East and the West, they died in the same year, the year 463 of the Hijri calendar. Al-Khatib al-Baghdadi, the great scholar of hadith from Baghdad, he died in the year 463. And the great scholar from Andalus, Imam Ibn Abdul Barr, he also died in the year 463. These two cities used to compete with each other, Cordoba versus Baghdad. So 700 soldiers conquer Cordoba, 700 soldiers conquer this other city. Then he says, this is easy. Tariq ibn Ziyad is saying everything is easy. He goes, he conquers Ustujja, he conquers Jayyan. He goes, he says, the capital city is very fortified, mountains and mountains. This is the correct time to conquer this capital city of Spain. He conquers the city of Toledo, Toleitila, that is in the middle of Spain. He has conquered most of Spain. But Musa ibn Nusayr is not happy. He sends him a letter, he says, Tariq ibn Ziyad, you're rushing. It is not proper for you to continue forward while you have not protected your back. And this is one of the lessons you have to learn from this history series. Just don't go ahead, Ikhwani Fillah. Always also check your back. Protect your back. Sometimes you go ahead, you're a general, you're a governor, you're a leader, you just go ahead and you forget your back and you end up being attacked or flanked from the back and you're destroyed. So he's not happy. He says to him, stop in Toledo. Then Musa ibn Nusayr also lands in the lands of Spain with an army of 12,000 soldiers, 18,000 soldiers, 18,000 soldiers. So the Muslim army, 18,000 plus 12,000 that landed is 30,000, minus the 3,000 that passed away in the battle of Wadi Birbat, 27,000. So he says to his son, go westwards, let's go westwards. And they conquered Narda, Lisbon, they conquered the entire of Portugal. So alhamdulillah, most of Portugal and Spain has been conquered by this period. Tariq ibn Ziyad, he meets up with Musa ibn Nusayr. Musa ibn Nusayr tells him, you did wrong. Don't rush. You're a young man. I'm 75 years of age. We don't do things like this. These are mistakes Muslims did before. Uqba ibn Nafi' al-Fihri and others, they rushed in battle and rushed to conquer land after land. No, you have to establish Islam. You have to teach the new Muslims about the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal. You have to establish order first before you go ahead. Don't have this greediness of capturing. Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, he says, Wallahi, I wish that there's a fire between me and the Persians. What I have conquered of Iraq and part of Iran is sufficient for me. Umar ibn Khattab, Amir al-Mu'mineen, one of the greatest leaders in Islamic history. So do not always, ikhwani fillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you this bravery, you're one of the heroes of Islam. Don't just rush forward and forward and forward. No, first establish and keep what you have firm, stable, then you can go ahead. So this period from the year 92 to the year 95 is known as the period of conquest of Andalus. All of Portugal and all of Spain was conquered by the Muslims by this period, except one small space in the northern of Spain, the kingdom of Asturias, the Basque region, the kingdom of Asturias. The Muslims did not conquer one small area of Spain that is known as the Asturian kingdom. And this one small space in the northern of Spain became a cancer that grew so large that led to the Muslims being expelled from the entire of Spain. I remember we used to have a debate with our brothers from the faculty of Sharia. They used to say, the Prophet ﷺ was mentioned as in a hadith. He said that the judges, at least a group of them, 1/3 of them, they'll be in paradise. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised 1/3 of the judges to be in paradise. What is the hadith? The Prophet ﷺ, he says, there are 3 types of judges. There are 3 types of judges. 2 types are in the hellfire, and 1 type is in Jannah. The first type, they have knowledge, they don't rule upon it. Hellfire. The second type, they don't have knowledge, they still rule upon it. Hellfire. The third type, they have knowledge and they rule upon it. So they used to say, this is a bishara, this is glad tidings for the people who take this position of being judges. But this is not the understanding of the Muslims. The Muslims used to run away from being a judge. If you're given food and you're told 1/3 of it is poisonous, eat. Who will eat? You're told this is a plate of food, 1/3 of it or 2/3 of it is poisonous. Who is going to eat it? So this small cancer that was left unconquered, not by the fault, but because of Qadar Allah and because of other factors, the Muslims were not able to conquer this land. Tariq ibn Ziyad, Musa ibn Nusayr are called back to Damascus. The Khalifa al-Walid ibn Abdul Malik calls them back. Why did he call them back? Because he felt that these two were rushing in victory. They wanted to conquer the entire of Europe for the sole purpose of reaching the land of Istanbul, the city of Constantinople. Why? Because there's a prophetic hadith, although it's not very authentic, but it was famous amongst the Muslims. The Prophet ﷺ, he says, لا تفتحن قسطنطينية فلا نعم الأمير أميرها ولا نعم الجيش ذلك الجيش. He says that you Muslims shall conquer the land of Constantinople, the land that is current Istanbul. And a blessed army is the army that conquers that city. And a blessed leader is the leader who leads that army. So Muslims from the time of the Sahaba, Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, they want to conquer the city of Constantinople to become a city of Islam, Islambul, the city of Islam. So this man, Musa ibn Nusayr and Tariq ibn Ziyad, they say, the Muslims have failed to conquer Constantinople from this side of the Arabic Peninsula. They failed. They have failed from the east. Let us try a new tactic and conquer from the west. So let us conquer Spain. After Spain, we'll go to France. France, Italy, Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia, we enter Romania, Bulgaria, then we enter Turkey from there, and we conquer Istanbul. We take the long way around because we want this glad tidings of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Al-Walid, when he heard this news, he says, these guys are crazy. These guys are not normal. Call them back to Damascus. So he stopped the conquest of the Muslims, of the early Muslims, and called them back to Damascus, and he kept them with them in Damascus. Tariq ibn Ziyad, we don't know where he went. Musa ibn Nusayr died later on in the year 97 in Dhul Hijjah. He died in the city of Medina, and he was buried in Baqi'. This ends the first period that we took in the previous lectures regarding the conquest of Andalus that began in the year 92 of the Hijri calendar to the year 95, the month of Dhul Hijjah. Then the second period began, the Muslims have conquered now Spain and Portugal. They have to rule it. They have to govern it. This is the period known as the period of governorship of Andalus. From the year 96 of the Hijri calendar to the year 138 of the Hijri calendar. 42 years the Muslims have to govern this area. And the very first governor is the son of Musa ibn Nusayr, Abdul Aziz ibn Musa ibn Nusayr, who is the conqueror of Portugal. If you ask to conquer Portugal, it's Abdul Aziz, the son, Abdul Aziz ibn Musa ibn Nusayr. So this Cristiano Ronaldo, all of them, they have to give respect to Abdul Aziz. So they conquered Spain and Portugal. They have to govern it. The very first governor is Abdul Aziz. Abdul Aziz is killed, is assassinated after a short while. This is a land that is no longer, is not stable. There's enemies everywhere. Number two, The enemies from within the Muslims. And that's very unfortunately, you find Muslims infighting each other time because of tribal issues, because of money, of dunya, of status, of position. So much so, sometimes you read a history book and you're really not happy. Why? Because you find a brother killing a brother, a father killing a son killing a father, a son killing a grandfather. So much fighting and in wars between the Muslims just because of position. And some of the Muslims, they died while they were spreading the jihad. They were fighting in Europe, they were fighting in France to spread this deen of Allah Azza wa Jal. So the year 96 of the Hijri calendar to the year 138 of the Hijri calendar was a period of governorship of Spain and Portugal, but it was not a stable period. There's a period 96 to the year 123 was a period of strength for the Muslims. The year 123 to the year 123 to the year 138 was a period of weakness for the Muslims. And more so, the great event that happened here, we mentioned in previous classes, is the year 114 of the Hijri calendar, where the Muslims, they reached about 100 kilometers from Paris. They conquered all of southern France. All of southern France, was land of the Muslims. Till today, you can find graves of Muslims buried in the southern of France, known as the French Riviera or the Septimania. You can find this in Bordeaux, in Arles, and so on, Toulouse. You can find Muslims buried there. So the Muslims, they arrived 100 kilometers from Paris. They want to conquer the city of Paris. And Paris is high, it's not in the middle of France, it's north of France. So they've conquered most of France. So the Muslims meet the French, led by Charles Martial. Charles Martial is leading the army of the French and the Europeans, 400,000. The Muslims are led by one of the heroes of Islamic history, Abdurrahman al-Ghafiqi. And they meet in the battle of Balat al-Shuhada. A great battle ensues. We mentioned in the previous lectures. You can always refer to the LMTV videos. And the Muslims, they lost this battle in Khanifillah. And Abdurrahman al-Ghafiqi was defeated and he was killed in this battle that is known as the Battle of the Castle of Martyrs of Shuhada. The Battle of Balat al-Shuhada in the year 114 of the Hijri calendar. We took some lessons that the mistakes the Muslims did in this battle. The first mistake, Khanifillah, in the Muslim society of Andalus and Spain, there was a lot of division based on race and tribalism. You're an Arab, you're a Berber, you're not from the Quraysh family, you're from the area of Najd, you're from Hijaz, you're from Yemen, you're lower than us, you're higher than us. There's so much infighting amongst the Muslims. The Prophet ﷺ says about racism, دَعُوهَا فَإِنَّهَا مُنْتِنَةٌ. Leave it, it's something smelling and disgusting. So whenever racism enters in a society of Muslims, there's no victory for you Muslims. When you pray in the Saf, did you notice the white man besides you, or the Hindi man, or the Somali, or the black man, or the white man next to you? No, you said Allahu Akbar. You left all that and you said Allah is the greatest. There was no racism at all. When you remove this, you'll get victory. Number two, Ikhwani Fillah, when dunya enters your heart as Muslims, then there's no victory for you. When you start preoccupied by the type of clothes that you wear, or the type of holidays that you want to go to, or the houses that you want to build, there's no dunya for you. Because shaitan will come and block you and tell you, you want to go do what? You want to go fight for the Muslims? What about your wife? Someone's going to marry your wife. Your children are going to be orphans. Your house is going to be taken over. Shaitan will block you based on your weakness of this dunya. So if you want victory, O Muslims, you have to leave this dunya completely. The Prophet ﷺ says, مَا الْفَقْرَ أَخْشَى عَلَيْكُمْ وَلَكِنْ أَخْشَى عَلَيْكُمْ. I don't fear for you poverty. What I fear for you is that this dunya is going to be made open for you. فَتَنَافَسُوا فِيهَا كَمَا تَنَافَسُوا. You start competing in this dunya like those people who competed. فَتُهْلِكَكُمْ كَمَا أَهْلَكَتْكُمْ. It will destroy you as it destroyed those people. So the Muslims, they became very weak. Then in the year 138 of the Hijri calendar, everyone in the entire world was sure that Muslims are going to be expelled anytime from Spain. So much infighting, so much civil wars. You guys are focusing on yourselves. The enemies will come and take over. Definitely. The year 138 of the Hijri calendar, everyone was sure that the Muslims led in Andalus by Yusuf ibn Abdurrahman al-Fihri, they shall be no more in the land of Andalus. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He brought a miracle. He sent one man by himself who came and reconquered the land of Spain and Portugal by himself. He did not come with a standing army. He did not come by a navy. He came by himself on a boat on the year 138 of the Hijri calendar. And in the year 138 of the Hijri calendar, he had conquered the entire Spain and Portugal. This man is Abdurrahman al-Dakhil. We mentioned in the previous lectures. Abdurrahman, the son of Muawiyah, the son of Hisham ibn Abdul Malik. His grandfather was the great Khalif of the Muslims, Hisham ibn Abdul Malik. One of the Khulafa, he says, Abu Ja'far al-Mansur, one of the greatest Khalifa of the Banu Abbas, he says, the greatest Khulafa of 4 Khalifas, Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Ali. When it comes to the Muslims, Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Ali. These are the greatest Khalifas. And the greatest kings that came thereafter. The first king is Muawiyah. This is from Banu Abbas, but he says the greatest king is Muawiyah. Then Abdurrahman, Abdul Malik ibn Marwan. Then Hisham ibn Abdul Malik that we're talking about now. And number 4, he says, Wa ana, Abu Ja'far al-Mansur. And he deserves that. So he says, this man lands in the year 138 of the Hijri calendar. And he fights Yusuf Abdurrahman al-Fihri, as we mentioned in the previous classes, and he gains victory, and he rules the land of Muslims from the year 138 of the Hijri calendar to the year 172, a period known as the Islamic Emirate of Andalus. Am I going too fast? This is just revision. Am I going too fast? You already took. Some didn't take. Too fast. But I asked dates. From the year 138 to the year 172 is how many years? Mathematics. How many years is that Abdurrahman al-Dakhil was ruling? 34 years. So he was the leader of the Muslims for 34 years. He was only 25 years of age when he started ruling. So sometimes, the old guys, they tell, you guys are too young, you should not be ruling. Leave this to older men. But if you look at our history, you find great leaders of Muslims who are young men. True or false? إنهم فتية آمنوا بربهم. These are young people who believed in Allah Azza wa Jal. When the Prophet ﷺ was in deathbed, he's dying, he sent an army to fight the Romans. Army has the people who are promised Jannah, the ones, Umar, Abu Bakr, Uthman, Ali. That's the greats of Islamic history. But who is the leader of this army? A 17-year-old Usama ibn Zayd. So the youth have a part to play in our history. Don't put the youth away. You guys, you have to pray back there. This is the line for the old people. No, the youth played a part. And this great Abdurrahman al-Dakhil was the leader of the Muslims from the year 138 to the year 172. And he established order. He built bridges, built roads, built a great civilization. And more so, he built the great mosque of Qurtuba. The grand mosque of Qurtuba is still present to this day. But it's no longer a mosque, it's currently a cathedral. If you go to Cordoba, you go to Sevilla, you see all these mosques that are built by those people. Mosques that are 100 times the size of Masjid Salam. 50 times, 100 times the size of our mosque here. And you wonder sometimes they didn't have a microphone, how are they leading prayers in those? But that's a separate issue, we'll discuss another time. So they built great mosques. Then number 3, he said, the budget of our country, we're going to divide into 3. As Andalus, we are a new empire. Our budget, we're going to divide number 3 in 3 parts. One part is for the military, for the army. The army, their weapons, their food, their provisions, 1/3. 1/3, we're going to use it for the salaries and for the development, building mosques, hospitals, roads, street lighting. That's street lighting those days. Do you have street lighting in South Sea? Yes, we have. That's street lighting those days. They built so much of civilization. That's 1/3. Then the other 1/3, let us save it for future emergency. Any emergency can occur. There can be a drought, there can be a war, there can be disease. Let us keep a 1/3. So it's always good for a country to always have a part that it saves from its budget. Not everything that you consume. Then he said, we have enemies all around us. We have to bring up the sunnah that our fathers from the Bani Umayyah were doing. Every year, we have to cause psychological warfare upon them. Not only psychological warfare, actual warfare. Sawa'if. Every summer, all Muslims, we're going for jihad. We're going to fight in France. We're going to teach this French a lesson. So make the French busy with themselves. If they're busy with themselves, are busy defending themselves, they will not even think once to attack us. Because they're always on the defensive. So he brought up this sunnah of Sawa'if. And he built navies. He built strong Islamic empire, the Islamic currency. He built one of the greatest gardens and boulevards. Great gardens. It's called Al-Rasafa. And he brought a lot of civilization. So this was the first leader of the Islamic Emirate of Andalus, Abdurrahman al-Dakhil. Why is he called al-Dakhil? Al-Dakhil in Arabic means Dakhala, the one who was entered. Because the first from the Bani Umayyah who entered Andalus to rule upon it. If you read history, in the year 132 of the Hijri calendar, what happened? Hajj Abu Bakr. What happened in the year 132 of the Hijri calendar? Yes. Yahya. What happened in Islamic history? A very bad event happened in the year 132. Naam Abdul Rahman. Yes. The Abbasid was killed. Who was killed? The Umayyads were killed by the Abbasids in the year 132 of the Hijri calendar. So they were overthrown. So the Banu Umayyah were overthrown in a very bloody revolution, massacred, they all killed, children, men, any person who can claim to be a Khalifa was killed. So the very first person from this family that was massacred to enter Andalus is this man, Abdurrahman, the grandson of Hisham ibn Abdul Malik, who was the Khalifa of the Muslims. So he entered by himself and started ruling this land from the year 138 to the year 172, which is 34 years. After that, when he reached the year 172, he looks at his children, Ikhwani fillah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَشَاوِرْهُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَمْرُهُمْ شُورَى بَيْنَهُمْ. That the Muslims, they always consult. So he looks at all his children. He says to the ulama, the fuqaha, the people of opinion, people who are respected in society, I feel like death is going to come to me soon. And it's the opposite, ikhwani fillah, from our time. Those days they could feel death coming even weeks before. Us in our time, because we are near the hour of judgment, death just comes comes suddenly. Mautul faj'ah. So those people, they used to know that they could feel sometimes, I feel like my time is ending. So he asks the ulama, the fuqaha, who should I make the leader of the Muslims? The fuqaha, they say to him, you want our opinion? Yes. Don't take your oldest son. He's very good, but the best of your children is one of your young children, is called Hisham. Take Hisham to be the leader of the Muslims. So Ikhwani fillah, he passed away Abdurrahman al-Dakhil in the year 172 of the Hijri calendar. So the leader of the Muslims became Hisham, the son of Abdurrahman al-Dakhil. Hisham ibn Abdurrahman ibn Muawiyah ibn Hisham ibn Abdul Malik ibn Marwan ibn Hakim al-As, and so on and so forth. So he became the leader from the year 172 to the year 180 of the Hijri calendar. This is a revision class. Am I going too fast? Amatosha. It's enough. I'll continue. So Hisham became the leader of the Muslims from the year 172 to the year 180. How many years? 18 or 20? 18. Between 172 and 180 is how many years? 8, not 18. 8 years. Time. The Muslims loved this man, ikhwan fillah. They used to say the example of Hisham is like the same example of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. Umar ibn Abdul Aziz is one of the great leaders of Islam that is known as the fifth right, so beloved by the Muslims. The Prophet ﷺ says every 100 years Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends someone who will revive the faith, who will make Muslims again, people feel like, brings more life to the deen. And the scholars, they say the very first person who did this is Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, then Imam Shafi'i after 100 years, and so on and so forth. So they loved this man. Hisham, they used to compare to him to Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. This man, ikhwani fillah, number one, he looks after the scholars. He himself was a scholar. He wears one piece of cloth or two pieces of cloth. He's not, no israf, no wastage. He has only one piece of two pieces of cloth. At night, ikhwani fillah, when it's raining, he comes to the mosque, he looks for the imams, says, you're leading Maghrib and Isha, take this salary, take this salary. He goes, he looks for the poor people, he makes sure they have food. He goes to the widows, assists them the entire night by himself or with a bodyguard at most. He goes around the same way Umar ibn Khattab used to have very famous walks at night. So if you're leader, you're an MP, an MCA, a governor, a senator, take this path from them. Walk at night, because you're going to be asked about every single person who lives within your dominion, within the place that you rule. So this man led the Muslims from the year 178 to the year 180 of the Hijri calendar. Then he died. His son Al-Hakam became the leader of the Muslims from the year 180 to the year 206 of the Hijri calendar. How long is that, 180 to 206? You're a mathematician today. 26 years. Hakam, the son of Hisham, the son of Abdurrahman al-Dakhil, from the year 180 to the year 206. But this man was not the same as his father or his grandfather. He was an oppressor. He will have some people revolting. He does not only stop the revolution and jail them, he goes further and he destroys and burns the houses of those people. The same way you're seeing happening right now in the West Bank and Nablus and Jerusalem, where if a Muslim is found to have made a mistake, they go and take it out on the Muslim and his entire family. And this is a form of dhulma that Islam does not accept. So he was not very good, he was an oppressive leader somewhat. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wished him well in the year 204, 2 years before he died, when he was in a period of strength and power, he repented to Allah Azza wa Jal. And he asked the Muslims to forgive him. And from the greatest act of his repentance, he made sure to choose his best son, even if it wasn't his oldest son, to be the leader of the Muslims. So one of his young children became the leader of the Muslims, Abdurrahman al-Awsat, Abdurrahman the second. In Andalus, we have three famous Abdurrahmans. Abdurrahman al-Dakhil, now this is the second Abdurrahman al-Awsat, who led the Muslims from the year 206 to the year 238 of the Hijri calendar. This is a period of strength and quwwah for the Muslims. The period, this Islamic Emirate, is from the year 138 of the Hijri calendar to the year 316 of the Hijri calendar. 138 to the year 316. The year 138 to the year 238, 100 years, strength, power, glory for the Muslims. The year 138 to the year 238. From the year 238 to the year 300 is a period of weakness and da'af on the Muslims. One of the things that happened when Abdurrahman al-Awsat was the leader of the Muslims, in the year 230 of the Hijri calendar, people from northern Europe, from Scandinavia, Vikings, you know the Vikings? From which countries?
Viking from
Norway, Sweden, from Denmark, the Scandinavian region. These people, barbarians, pagans, they worship Odin and other things. They came and attacked the Muslims in Spain. They entered the city of Sevilla. They killed all the men they could find, take all the gold, rape the women, take them as slaves, burn the entire city. The entire city was destroyed. Nothing had remained in Sevilla. They go to Murcia, they destroy. They go to the other cities, they destroy everything. Nothing is left. Who are these people? Abdurrahman al-Awsat declares jihad upon them. He gathers the ulama, he gathers the people of Islam, and they fight these people and they expel them from the land of Andalus in the year 231. And he keeps fortifications and he strengthens the land of Andalus. So, Ikhwani fillah, this is a period of history from the year 138 to the year 238 of the Hijri calendar, where the Muslims were very strong in Andalus. But unfortunately, in this period, especially in the time of Hakam, we lost the city of Barcelona. The city of Barcelona, we lost it to the Christians. It became the kingdom of Aragon. The kingdom we talked about, the Kansa on the northern, it became the kingdom of Leon. So two new kingdoms were formed by the Christians in the north that were a threat to the Muslims. From the year 138 to the year 238. Then from the year 238 to the year 300 was a period of extreme weakness for the Muslims. Why was this a period of extreme weakness? What happened to the Muslims that they reached this low level once again after 100 years of glory? And what miracle would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give them again? One man again will come and give them victory and become the greatest ruler, not only of Spain in that period, but of Spain of entire history, and more so of Europe of entire history. Who is this one man that became the greatest leader that Spain has ever known? Till today, even the Spaniards, regardless of them hiding our history, they hide the entire history of the Muslims in Spain. 800 years is like a forgotten history. 800 years of Spain is just deleted. It's not in the books. They mention it in nitbits, but they don't forget the history of this one man. Because this one man, despite being a Muslim, gave Spain and Portugal a great name. Who is this one man that made Spain very powerful, very glorifying, that it became the most powerful kingdom at the time? This is what we shall look at in our forthcoming lecture tomorrow night, inshallah. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.